pregnant German shepherd, was chained to a roller coaster track, baby's next move. Left everyone in tears. What happened next will shock you. Grab some tissues and prepare for an emotional journey that will touch your heart. If this story moves you, let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Thunder crashed outside the window, shaking the small two-story house to its foundations. Rain pelted against the glass like tiny stones, creating a constant rhythm that usually lulled 5-year-old Liam to sleep. But tonight was different. Tonight, something was wrong. Liam pressed his small hands against the cold window pane, his breath creating little clouds of fog that disappeared almost as quickly as they formed. His blue eyes, wide and alert despite the late hour, scanned the darkness beyond. "Mommy," he whispered, not turning away from the window. "Mommy, someone's crying." Hannah, exhausted after a 12-hour shift at the hospital, sighed as she folded the last of the laundry. Her son had always been sensitive, too sensitive, according to her husband Mason. Where other kids saw shadows, Liam saw monsters. Where others heard the wind, Liam heard voices. "It's just the storm, sweetheart," she said gently, placing the folded towels into the hallway closet. "The wind can sound like crying sometimes." But Liam shook his head stubbornly, his blonde curls bouncing with the movement. "No, Mommy, she's scared. She needs help." Hannah walked over to her son and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Through the window, she could see nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of lightning illuminating their rain-soaked backyard. "There's nobody out there, Liam. Who would be outside in this weather?" Liam's bottom lip trembled. "She is, and she's scared." Hannah knelt beside him, trying to mask her concern with a reassuring smile. Liam had always been different from other children his age. His preschool teacher had commented on his unusual empathy, how he seemed to feel others' emotions as if they were his own. It was both a gift and a burden for a child so young. "How about some hot chocolate?" Hannah suggested, hoping to distract him. "Then it's straight to bed. Daddy will be home soon, and he'll check outside if you're still worried." Liam nodded reluctantly and followed his mother into the kitchen. But as Hannah reached for the cocoa powder in the cabinet, a particularly loud clap of thunder shook the house. The lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged the room into complete darkness. "Mommy," Liam cried out, his voice tinged with fear. "It's okay, baby," Hannah reassured him, fumbling for her phone in her pocket to use as a flashlight. "Just a power outage. The lights will come back on soon." The soft glow of her phone illuminated Liam's face, his features twisted with worry. But he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the window again, and this time, Hannah could have sworn she heard something too. A sound that didn't quite fit with the howling wind and pounding rain. A cry, distant but distinct. Before Hannah could process what she was hearing, Liam bolted toward the window. "See, Mommy? She needs help. She's calling us." Hannah followed her son, a chill that had nothing to do with the power outage creeping up her spine. As she reached the window, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, and for a brief moment, she could see past their yard to the abandoned amusement park that sat at the edge of town, a decrepit reminder of better economic times. The old roller coaster, a twisted metal skeleton against the stormy sky, seemed to come alive in the lightning flash. And though Hannah tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, she could have sworn she saw movement near its base. "The crying is coming from the park," Liam said with absolute certainty. "From the roller coaster." Hannah shook her head. "Liam, that's impossible. The park has been closed for years. No one goes there anymore." "She's there," Liam insisted, his voice rising with urgency. "She's afraid and alone and—" His words were cut off by another cry, louder this time, unmistakable even over the storm. The front door opened with a bang, and Mason walked in, soaked to the bone, his work boots leaving muddy prints on the floor. "Power's out all over town," he announced, shaking rainwater from his jacket. "Storm knocked down a power line near the old park. I saw it on my way home." Hannah met her husband's eyes over Liam's head. "Mason, Liam thinks he hears someone crying from the direction of the old amusement park." Mason's expression softened as he looked at his son. "Buddy, no one would be at the park in this weather. It's probably just the wind playing tricks on you." But Liam was beyond consolation now. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he pulled away from his mother's grasp. "No, you're not listening. She's there, and she's going to get hurt if we don't help her." Mason exchanged a worried glance with Hannah. Their son's distress was real, even if the cause wasn't. He knelt down to Liam's level. "Who's a she, buddy?" "Who do you think is out there?" Liam's next words sent a chill through both parents. "I don't know her name, but she's gonna have babies soon, and she's scared. So scared." As if to punctuate his words, a particularly mournful howl cut through the storm noise, a sound that was unmistakably animal, yet filled with such pain and fear that it seemed almost human. Mason straightened up, his skepticism giving way to concern. "That didn't sound like the wind." "We have to help her," Liam cried, already running toward the front door. Before either parent could stop him, he had thrown it open and was dashing barefoot into the storm. "Liam!" Hannah screamed, grabbing the first jacket she could find and racing after her son. Mason was right behind her, flashlight in hand. The rain was merciless, soaking them instantly as they chased their son across the yard. Liam, driven by some force neither parent could understand, ran with purpose toward the abandoned amusement park, his small feet splashing through puddles as lightning cracked overhead. "Liam, stop!" Mason shouted, his voice nearly lost in the roar of the storm. But Liam was beyond hearing, beyond reason. Something was calling to him, and he would not be deterred. Hannah's heart pounded in her chest as she ran, fear for her son overriding any concern for herself. The old amusement park was a dangerous place even in daylight, rusted metal, rotting wood, potential sinkholes, where the ground had eroded beneath abandoned structures. In this storm, in the darkness, it was a death trap. They reached the chain-link fence that surrounded the park. Once meant to keep trespassers out, it now lay partially collapsed in several places. Liam squeezed through a gap without hesitation, disappearing into the shadows beyond. "Liam!" Hannah cried, forcing her way through the same opening, ignoring the sharp edges that caught and tore at her clothing. Mason followed, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing glimpses of what had once been a place of joy and laughter, now transformed by time and neglect into something sinister, the skeletal remains of carnival games, the ghoulish faces of faded carousel animals, and looming above it all, the massive roller coaster, its tracks a twisted silhouette against the lightning-filled sky. The cries were clearer now, unmistakable, a dog in distress. But why here? And why tonight, in the middle of a storm? "Liam!" Mason called, sweeping the flashlight beam across the rain-soaked grounds. "Liam, where are you?" "There." Hannah pointed to a small figure running toward the base of the roller coaster. "Liam, stop! It's not safe!" But Liam kept running as if drawn by an invisible thread. The roller coaster rose above him, a monstrous relic of the past, its metal frame groaning and creaking in the wind. As Mason and Hannah closed the distance, they could hear Liam's voice, soft yet determined, speaking to someone, or something, they couldn't yet see. "It's okay," he was saying. "We're here now. We'll help you." Mason's flashlight beam finally caught up with Liam, illuminating the scene before them, and what they saw made both parents freeze in their tracks. There, beneath the lowest part of the roller coaster track, where the cars would thunder past just feet above the ground, was a German shepherd. Her golden brown coat was soaked and matted, her amber eyes wide with fear, and around her neck was a heavy chain, padlocked to the metal support of the roller coaster track. But what made Hannah gasp was the dog's swollen belly. She was pregnant, heavily pregnant. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered, approaching slowly to avoid frightening the animal further. Who would do something like this? Liam was already kneeling beside the dog, his small hand gently stroking her wet fur. "I told you she needed help," he said, looking up at his parents with tears mixing with raindrops on his face. "She told me." Mason moved closer, his flashlight revealing more details of the cruel scene. The chain was thick and new. This was no accident, no case of a stray dog becoming entangled by chance. Someone had deliberately chained this pregnant animal to the roller coaster track. "We need to get her out of here," Mason said, examining the padlock. "Hannah, do you have a hairpin or something we could use to pick this?" Hannah shook her head, frantically searching her pockets. "Nothing? Maybe we could try to break the chain?" The dog whimpered, pressing closer to Liam as if seeking protection. The boy wrapped his arms around her neck, whispering comforting words that were lost in the storm. Then, a sound cut through the howling wind and rain. A sound that didn't belong in an abandoned amusement park. a mechanical groan, followed by the distinct click of electrical systems powering up. Mason's head snapped up, his face draining of color as lights began to flicker along the roller coaster track. Impossible. The park had been closed for years. The power had been cut off. Even if it hadn't been, the storm had knocked out electricity to the entire area. Yet the roller coaster was coming to life around them. "That's not possible," Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible over the growing mechanical noise. "The power is out everywhere." But the evidence was undeniable. Lights were illuminating the track, growing brighter by the second, and somewhere in the distance they could hear the unmistakable sound of roller coaster cars beginning to move. "Someone's turned it on," Mason realized, his voice tight with fear. "Someone wants to—" He couldn't finish the sentence, not with Liam there, but the implication was clear. Someone had chained a pregnant dog to the track and was now activating the roller coaster. This wasn't a cruel prank or an act of animal abuse. It was an attempted execution. "We need to get her out of here now," Hannah cried, pulling at the chain with bare hands, achieving nothing but pain as the metal links bit into her skin. The dog began to panic, sensing the danger even if she didn't understand its source. She pulled against the chain, whimpering and trying to flee, but the padlock held firm. Liam, with a child's strange clarity in moments of crisis, placed his hands on either side of the dog's face, forcing her to look at him. "It's okay," he said again, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. "I won't let them take you." The dog stopped struggling, her amber eyes locked with Liam's blue ones. And in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that transcended the normal boundaries between human and animal. She licked Liam's face once, a gesture of trust that broke Hannah's heart. The mechanical noises grew louder. The roller coaster was picking up speed. "Mason, do something!" Hannah screamed, panic overwhelming her. Mason looked around desperately for anything that could break the chain or the padlock. Finding nothing, he positioned himself between the track and his family, as if his body could somehow shield them from a speeding roller coaster. "Get back!" he shouted. "Both of you, get back now!" But Liam wouldn't move, and the dog couldn't. The thunder crashed again, and in that moment, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and lean, with rainwater streaming from a military-style jacket, the stranger moved with purpose toward them. "Move!" the man commanded, pushing past Mason and kneeling beside the chained dog. In his hand was a pair of bolt cutters, large, industrial-strength tools that seemed out of place for someone to be carrying through an abandoned amusement park in the middle of a storm. Without explanation or hesitation, the stranger positioned the bolt cutters around the chain and squeezed the handles with practiced strength. The chain resisted for a moment, then gave way with a loud snap. "Go!" the man shouted, grabbing the severed chain and pulling the dog toward them, away from the track. Mason didn't need to be told twice. He scooped Liam into his arms while Hannah and the stranger guided the terrified dog away from the roller coaster tracks. They had barely cleared the area when the roller coaster cars thundered past, the wind of their passage whipping their clothes and hair. The spot where the dog had been chained was now empty, but the implications of what had almost happened hung in the air between them, heavier than the storm clouds overhead. The dog collapsed a few yards away, her body shaking with exhaustion and fear. Liam wiggled out of his father's arms and knelt beside her again, his small hand stroking her wet fur with a tenderness that belied his years. "You're safe now," he whispered. "We won't let anyone hurt you." The stranger stood at a slight distance, watching them with an unreadable expression. The bolt cutters hung from one hand, water dripping from the metal. "Who are you?" Mason asked, positioning himself protectively between the stranger and his family. "And how did you happen to be here with bolt cutters exactly when we needed them?" The man's eyes, hard and assessing, moved from Mason to Hannah to Liam and finally to the dog. "Name's Logan," he said simply, "and I've been tracking her for 3 days." Hannah, who had been checking the dog for injuries, looked up sharply. "Tracking her? Why? Is she yours?" Logan shook his head, rain dripping from his short military-style haircut. "Number. But I know who she belongs to. And they're not the kind of people you want to mess with." A train horn blared in the distance, startling all of them, but there was no train track near the amusement park. The sound had come from the roller coaster, which was making another circuit, picking up speed as it headed back toward them. "We need to get out of here," Logan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now." They know someone interfered. They'll be coming. Who? Mason demanded. Who would do something like this? Logan's expression darkened. The kind of people who chain a pregnant dog to a roller coaster track and turn it on during a lightning storm, he said grimly. The kind who won't like that we saved her. As if to emphasize his point, a car appeared on the road beside the amusement park, its headlights cutting through the rain. It slowed as it approached the park entrance. Too late, Logan muttered. They're already here. The dog whimpered, pressing closer to Liam, and in that moment, all of them realized that their night of terror was just beginning. Mason grabbed Hannah's arm, pulling her and Liam behind the dilapidated ticket booth. Logan followed, guiding the pregnant German shepherd with them. The headlights swept across the abandoned park as the car pulled into the gravel lot, its tires crunching over debris and puddles. "Who are these people?" Hannah whispered, her arms wrapped protectively around Liam, who refused to let go of the dog's matted fur. Logan's face hardened as he peered around the edge of the booth. "Dog fighters. They use pregnant females to breed fighting dogs. When they're done with them..." His voice trailed off, eyes darting to Liam. Mason understood the unspoken horror. So, chaining her to the tracks was a message, Logan finished, to anyone who might interfere with their operation. The car doors opened, and two men stepped out, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Their heavy boots splashed through puddles as they approached the roller coaster. "Check the track," one of them barked. "See if she's still there." Logan motioned for them all to stay down. The pregnant dog seemed to understand the danger, pressing her body low to the ground, not making a sound despite her evident fear. Liam stroked her head gently. "What's your name?" he whispered to the dog. "I'm going to call you Nova, like a bright star in the darkness." The newly named Nova looked at Liam with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand every word. She licked his hand once, the gesture somehow both a thank you and a promise. "We need to move," Logan whispered. "Follow me. Stay low." They crept along the perimeter of the park, using abandoned game booths and broken rides as cover. The storm continued to rage, providing both concealment from sound and the occasional flash of lightning that threatened to expose them. "Where are we going?" Hannah asked, her voice barely audible. "My truck is parked on the service road behind the park," Logan replied. "If we can reach it without being seen..." A shout cut through the storm. "The chain's been cut! Find whoever did this!" "Run!" Mason ordered, no longer caring about stealth. They sprinted through the rain, their feet slipping on the wet ground. Nova kept pace despite her condition, her survival instinct overriding her exhaustion. Mason led the way, Hannah right behind him, with Liam's hand clutched tightly in hers. Logan brought up the rear, constantly glancing back to ensure they weren't being followed. The service road appeared ahead of them, a narrow dirt path now turned to mud in the downpour. Logan pointed to an old pickup truck parked beneath a grove of trees. "There! Go!" They were halfway to the truck when a flashlight beam caught them, freezing them in its harsh glare. "Hey, stop right there!" Logan reacted instantly, pushing Mason toward the truck. "Get them out of here. Keys are in the ignition. Go!" Before anyone could protest, Logan turned and charged toward the man with the flashlight, tackling him to the ground. The light went flying, landing in a puddle where it continued to shine, illuminating the struggle between the two men. "Logan!" Hannah cried, but Mason was already pulling her toward the truck. "We can't help him. We need to get Liam and the dog to safety." They reached the truck, Mason yanking the driver's side door open and helping Hannah and Liam inside. Nova jumped in without prompting, her body pressed against Liam's as if determined to protect him. Mason turned the key, the engine roaring to life. Through the rain-streaked windshield, they could see Logan still fighting the man, but now a second figure was approaching from the darkness. "We can't leave him," Hannah insisted. Mason gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "We don't have a choice. We have to protect Liam." As if hearing his name, Liam pressed his face against the window. "Logan!" he screamed, his voice breaking with fear. And then, something unexpected happened. Nova barked, a sharp, commanding sound that cut through the storm. She leaped from the truck before anyone could stop her and raced toward Logan, her pregnant belly bouncing with each stride. "Nova, no!" Liam cried, trying to follow, but Hannah held him back. The second man had reached Logan and his opponent, a metal pipe raised to strike. But before he could bring it down, Nova launched herself at him, her teeth sinking into his arm. The man screamed, dropping the pipe as he tried to shake the dog off. Logan, seeing his chance, delivered a knockout punch to his opponent, and scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the fallen pipe and swung it at the second man, who was still struggling with Nova. The blow connected with a sickening crack, and the man crumpled to the ground. "Logan!" Mason shouted from the truck. "Come on!" Logan sprinted toward them, Nova right beside him. They had barely closed the truck doors when more headlights appeared at the entrance to the service road. "Go, go, go!" Logan urged, and Mason floored the accelerator. The truck fishtailed in the mud before finding traction, speeding away just as the second car reached the fallen men. In the rearview mirror, they could see more figures emerging, but they were already disappearing into the storm, the truck's taillights fading into the darkness. "They'll come after us," Logan said grimly, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. "They always do." Hannah, who had been checking Liam for injuries, looked up sharply. "Who are you really? How do you know so much about these people?" Logan's expression was unreadable in the dim light of the truck cab. "I was military, K-9 unit. Now I work with an underground network that rescues dogs from fighting rings." He reached over to stroke Nova's head. "We've been tracking her for days after a tip-off about a pregnant female stolen from a shelter." "But why chain her to the roller coaster?" Mason asked, his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road ahead. "Why not just—" He couldn't finish the sentence with Liam listening, but Logan understood. "It's a warning," he repeated. "They wanted to make an example of her. Send a message to anyone who might be thinking of interfering with their operation." Liam, who had been quietly stroking Nova's fur, suddenly gasped. "Mommy, Nova's shaking." Hannah turned to see the German shepherd trembling, her body tense and rigid. "She's going into labor," she realized with horror. The stress must have triggered it. "We need to get her somewhere safe," Logan said. "Not just from the dog fighters, but for her to have her puppies." Mason nodded, already turning the truck toward home. "Our place. It's closest." "No," Logan countered. "That's the first place they'll look. They saw your faces. They'll track you down." "Then where?" Hannah demanded. "We can't just drive around with a dog giving birth in the back seat." Logan thought for a moment, then gave Mason directions to a location on the outskirts of town. They drove in tense silence, broken only by Nova's increasingly distressed whimpers and Liam's soft words of comfort. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, isolated cabin surrounded by trees. Despite the storm, it looked welcoming, with light spilling from its windows. "What is this place?" Mason asked as they parked. "Safe house," Logan answered simply. "For rescued animals and the people who help them." They hurried inside, Logan carrying Nova despite her size, her body now racked with contractions. The cabin was warm and surprisingly well equipped, with a large area set up like a veterinary clinic. A woman with gray-streaked hair looked up as they entered, her eyes widening at the sight of Nova. "Logan, what happened? Who are these people?" "Later, Marge," Logan said, laying Nova gently on a padded table. "She's in labor, early from the looks of it." Marge sprang into action, gathering towels and supplies. "How far along is she?" "A week, maybe 2 from full term," Logan estimated. "She's been through hell tonight." As Marge examined Nova, Hannah pulled Liam aside, trying to distract him from the birthing process that was about to unfold. But Liam wouldn't be moved. "I need to stay with her," he insisted, his small face set with determination beyond his years. "She needs me." And strangely, it seemed he was right. Nova, despite her pain, kept looking for Liam, calming only when he was in her line of sight. "Let him stay," Marge said, recognizing the bond between them. "She trusts him. That will help." What followed was a night none of them would ever forget. As the storm raged outside, Nova gave birth to 5 tiny puppies, perfect miniature versions of herself, blind and helpless, their wet fur darkening as Marge cleaned them. Liam watched in awe, tears streaming down his face as each new life entered the world. Nova, exhausted but determined, cleaned each puppy before allowing Marge to place them against her body to nurse. "They're beautiful," Liam whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny paw with a finger. "Look, Nova, you're a mommy now." The German shepherd looked up at him with tired eyes filled with trust, then rested her head on her paws, her body curled protectively around her newborns. As the adrenaline of the night began to fade, the adults gathered in the cabin's small kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "These people won't just give up," Logan explained, nursing a cup of strong coffee. "They've invested too much in their operation. And now they've seen all of you. They'll be looking. Hannah's face paled. Are you saying we're in danger? That Liam is in danger? Logan nodded grimly. I won't lie to you. These aren't people who forgive and forget. They've killed to protect their business before. We should call the police, Mason suggested. We will, Logan agreed. But you need to understand, this ring has connections, money to buy influence. The local force might not be enough. So what do we do? Hannah asked, her voice small but determined. Stay here tonight, Marge said, joining the conversation. The cabin is secure, off the grid. We have people watching the perimeter. Tomorrow, we'll contact people I trust on the force. Mason looked at Hannah, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, he nodded. Okay, one night, but tomorrow we need a real plan. We have lives, jobs, Liam has school. One night, Logan agreed. That's all I'm asking. They made makeshift beds in the cabin's small living room, Liam refusing to leave Nova's side. He curled up on a blanket beside her and her puppies, his small body fitting perfectly in the curve of Nova's larger form. I'll protect you, he whispered to the dog and her babies, just like you protected Logan. Nova licked his face once before closing her eyes, her body relaxing into sleep. Hannah watched from the doorway, her heart both full and heavy. It's like they've known each other forever, she said softly to Mason, who stood beside her. He always wanted a dog, Mason replied, though I never imagined it would happen like this. What are we going to do? Hannah asked, voicing the question that had been hanging between them all night. Mason put his arm around her shoulders. Whatever we have to protect our family. His gaze lingered on Liam and Nova. All of our family. They retreated to their makeshift bed, exhaustion finally overtaking them, but sleep was fitful, haunted by images of chains and roller coasters and men with flashlights cutting through the darkness. Outside, the storm began to fade, the first hints of dawn lightening the eastern sky. But as one threat receded, another was just beginning to take shape. In the pale light of early morning, Logan stood guard at the cabin window, his military training evident in his alert posture. Marge joined him, handing him a fresh cup of coffee. You know they won't stop, she said quietly. Logan nodded. I know, but neither will I. Inside the small veterinary area, Liam slept peacefully, his head resting against Nova's side, one hand touching a tiny puppy. The German Shepherd's eyes were open, alert despite her exhaustion, her gaze fixed on the door, as if she too understood that danger was still stalking them. One of the puppies, the smallest of the litter, began to wriggle away from its siblings. Nova nudged it gently back toward the warmth of her body, her mothering instinct strong despite her ordeal. The puppy, as if sensing its mother's concern, settled back down, its tiny body rising and falling with rapid breaths. Mason and Hannah, unable to sleep any longer, joined Logan and Marge by the window. We need a plan, Mason said. A real one. These people have seen our faces. They know what Liam looks like. Logan's expression was grim. I know people who can help. People who specialize in making problems like this disappear. What kind of people? Hannah asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Logan met her gaze steadily. The kind you don't want to know about unless you have to. But they're good people. They protect witnesses against cartels, terrorists. They can protect you against dogfighters. The weight of their situation settled over them. In the space of one stormy night, their ordinary lives had been upended, thrust into a world of danger none of them had imagined possible. And what about Nova? Hannah asked. And her puppies? Logan glanced toward the room where the German Shepherd lay with Liam. They'll need protection too. These people won't give up on her easily. She's valuable to them, her bloodline, her puppies. Mason ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and fatigue. So we just disappear? Leave our lives behind? Over a dog? Not just a dog, Hannah corrected him gently. Over Liam, over our safety. Before Mason could respond, a sound cut through the early morning quiet, the crunch of tires on gravel. Logan was at the window instantly, his body tense. Car coming up the drive, black SUV, windows tinted. Marge moved quickly to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal a shotgun. Friends or foes? Don't know yet, Logan replied, reaching for the weapon. But we're about to find out. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted, tension replacing exhaustion, Hannah rushed to where Liam slept with Nova, ready to protect her son at any cost. As the SUV pulled up outside the cabin, all of them held their breath, waiting to see if the new day would bring rescue or a continuation of their nightmare. What will happen when the mysterious SUV arrives? Will Liam's special connection with Nova be enough to save both families? Comment below with what you think happens next. Logan positioned himself by the window, shotgun ready. Mason stood protectively in front of Hannah and the doorway to where Liam and Nova were. Marge moved to the back door, ensuring they had an escape route if needed. The SUV's engine cut off. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, with short dark hair and the confident posture of law enforcement. "Police?" Hannah whispered hopefully. Logan shook his head, his grip on the shotgun not relaxing. "Maybe. Or they want us to think that?" The woman approached the cabin alone, hands clearly visible at her sides. When she reached the porch, she called out, "Logan, it's Detective Rivera. Marge called me." Logan and Marge exchanged glances. "She's one of the good ones," Marge said quietly. "I contacted her while you were all sleeping." Logan lowered the shotgun slightly but didn't put it away. He opened the door just enough to see the woman's face, confirmation that she was who she